Hi everybody, I think we can go ahead and get started. My name is Melissa Drazen-Smith, and I am the acting director and current assistant director of the prosecution unit of the Denver City Attorney's Office. A little bit about us at the City Attorney's Office. I know everybody's legal system is a little bit different. In Colorado, the District Attorney's Office handles state charges, the laws that are passed by the state legislature, and the City Attorney's Office takes some of their lower level misdemeanors and petty offenses, as well as violations of the municipal ordinances, which are the laws passed by the City Council in Denver. So we have some overlapping stuff that we do, but all our cases are direct filed by the police. We don't have an intake unit, and all of our charges have the same maximum possible penalty of a year in the county jail and up to $999 in fines or 2 years of probation. And a little bit about me. I guess they would call me a career prosecutor. I've been prosecuting for about 20 years with an 18-month sentence in the middle there to commercial litigation, which was those were the bad times. I was in a district attorney's office for about 7 years, and the rest of the time I've been at the city attorney's office. So we decided to go paperless in 2009. At that time, we had about 28,000 general sessions violations, which are our criminal code violations. They include things like assaults, simple assaults, disturbing the peace, urinating in public, shoplifting, domestic violence cases, trespassing. We had another 5,000 cases of general violations, which are the code violations, zoning, building, fire, dog, those type of things, and another 5,300 juvenile cases. We have an excise and licensing group, which deals with liquor and professional and marijuana license enforcement. Obviously, they're getting busier now in Colorado. We have a nuisance abatement unit that actually does civil casework. They're in rem actions that are against property that's used in the commission of crime. So if somebody picks up a prostitute and they are using a car at the time, we take their car and close it for a while so that they can no longer use it for criminal purposes. And then we have a probate unit that deals with mental health and drug and alcohol commitments. And again, those probate cases are not criminal in nature. We also have traffic cases of 130,000 a year, and we are going to go paperless in traffic hopefully this coming year. The rest of our divisions have pretty much all gone paperless. And when I say paperless, I do need to qualify that just a little bit. It's really more paper on demand, because we do have the ability to have paper, and in some cases we have to have some bits of paper. So this is a little flow chart that kind of gives you an idea of a simplified flow of how the cases go. So the defendant is contacted out on the street by the police, and the police used to bring all of the paper to the county court, and the county court would keep all our copies of the ticket, everything that we would have to give up in discovery, as well as their own copies of the ticket. And then when the defendant appeared, either in custody in one courtroom, or if they were given a summons, they would come back out of custody in another courtroom, or into the juvenile court. Then we would split the paper in half. The court would keep their paper, and we would keep our paper. So they would have the chance to make their plea at those times, and then we would make our file from there. We could not provide discovery for defense counsel or defendants until they pled not guilty and set a case for trial, because we didn't have access to the documents. And it was messy because the court was able to see more than it should, and we were able to see nothing, which is awkward. So what we determined as we were going to make the decision to go paperless is that with all of these cases coming in annually, if we're talking about 10 touches to the file, including attorney touches, paralegal touches, the court clerk touches, our secretary touches, our victim advocate touches, we assumed 10 touches per file. We were talking about 400,000 file touches if the case was not set for trial. If they were set for trial, they had a lot more touches because they would have to go back and forth between the attorney and the advocate. And so we're talking about 200,000 extra file touches on top of that. And every file touch is a chance to have an error. And then once you make an error, it's a chance to magnify the error. So this is what our files used to look like. We would have these big bags. Everybody, I'm sure everybody has this. Either you have the cart that you drag, or you have the big bags that you drag. And then what we did was we had everything handwritten on the front of files. We had a worse problem than most of you because we didn't even have files that opened and had the little sticky outy things. We had the files that you just shove things in. And so you shove things in, you take them out, you shuffle through them, you shove them back in, you scrunch up the papers that you didn't take out in the first time. It was horrible. And so then, as we would request subpoenas and stuff, we would staple things to the front of the file. And then we would pass the file from person to person. It would have a flow from the attorney to the secretary to the advocate to the secretary to the attorney to the secretary. And perish the thought, some victim would call when you didn't happen to have the file on your desk because you would have to go find the file and then make notes about what you did. The other thing that was quite upsetting was that everything is handwritten on the file. Nobody can read my handwriting. And then when people leave, you can't even remember who the initials referred to on the back of the file and who touched it. So we set out to implement Justware in 2009, and we actually went live in 2010. Now we spend our time on people, not paper. So here was the process. You have to create the right team. You have to make sure that you include sort of one of everybody on the team that creates your Justware version. And I have to say, I don't think that you can go paperless with Justware out of the box. I think that you have to customize it to what you do. And in doing that, we had a prosecutor, a legal secretary, a victim advocate, and a assistant administrator. So everybody's perspective was included, every end user. We dedicated 2 full-time subject matter experts for 18 months to build what we wanted. And having an internal position who can act as a program manager is really helpful. We didn't recognize that at first. That was something we learned by not having one. The full-time subject matter experts is also extremely important because they are the ones who are really going to know what data needs to be incorporated. So the process in terms of getting there, this map your existing business process is something that I don't know if any of you guys work with IT people. They love those maps and they love the whiteboard. So we spent a lot of time with the whiteboard and the mapping, and this is what our map looked like. Oh, God. So it looks a little bit like you could never ever take that and put it into a nice, clean electronic process. But in truth, it wasn't that hard. Once we figured out what all the steps were, it was so much cleaner once we could automate it. So you have to figure out what does everybody do in the paper world? And you will be surprised how many times you will go back and add steps because you don't realize, in your mind that you skip a bunch of things because you know what's coming next and what's coming next. You have to know who touches the cases and when. And then this domino effects that you have, that's huge. We found that there were a lot of unintended consequences and people that we didn't realize were having access to our information at different points. So you have to kind of think through what kind of domino effects you're going to have when you change your process. So then after you've done the paper process, then you have to think about how that can work within the electronic business process. You have to decide what stays and what goes. I mean, there are things that you're not going to have in the same way. So in the paper process, we had the attorneys would do open the case for trial and figure out what subpoenas to get and what other evidence needed to be gathered and that type of thing. And then the file would go to the victim advocate to make contact with the victim. In an electronic process, you wouldn't want to build in tasking back and forth or an automated process for a file to go from an attorney to a victim advocate. Because in an electronic process in Justware, both can access the file at the same time. They don't need to have a paper file. So you have to look at the way your map works and decide what processes need to remain and what you have to identify as being a place that the computer has to tickle you to go from one thing to the next. Like after an attorney wants the subpoenas to be ordered, it has to electronically alert a secretary to generate them. But you don't have to build that alert in to talk to a victim advocate because they can do it at the same time. Does that make sense? And so when you have a business rule, it also can eliminate steps. So instead of me having to stand up and walk over to the secretary's desk and give that secretary my file in order to get the subpoenas, we have a business rule that says, automatically if I have checked a subpoena box, there's an alert to the secretary or a task to the secretary that says you need to get that. And then what steps can be rerouted using Justware. This is probably the most important part of going paperless, this change management. Lawyers love paper. We really are averse to change. We like what we like, and we have a way of doing things and it works, and we don't want to change. And so it's very, very important to start that process of getting people to understand the change is coming. We're going to ride the wave. We're going to do it together, and we're all going to be happy about it. Tell them early and often. We also gave a number of interim demonstrations of what Justware was going to do. Some of them went well, some of them didn't go well. When they didn't go well, it was very scary to the staff. So if you are going to give demonstrations, make sure that they are working correctly, because the failure to work correctly is very, very scary. So you have to be patient, you have to be encouraging, and you have to have a supportive environment. But that being said, I spent a lot of time personally going from office to office confiscating paper files. When we made the changeover, they started hiding files in their office so that they could keep them. They had a system in the courtroom where they had a bin so that they could organize their files. And I took the bins, and they found the bins, and they brought them back. So even though I was patient and encouraging and loving and supportive, you still have to go and put the hammer down. So when we first started going to court, we were taking laptops like this with us. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's a regular size laptop. It turns out they were pretty heavy, and we didn't love them, and we've now gone to tablets. And
what kind of tablets did you get? What kind of tablets? Just a Windows tablet?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it works really well, and if anybody wants to see one after we're done, I have my tablet, and I also have the views that we built into Justware that you can take a look at. We decided to try and pilot it in one courtroom. That was really awkward. I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. Within a month, we had all the rest of the courtrooms going because we couldn't really go with just one courtroom. It just didn't seem to work out for us. I don't know if you have a system where your courtrooms are very separate from one another and they have a distinct caseload, maybe you can do it. But there was some mixing and matching in our courtrooms and it just didn't work well.
Did you transfer those printers or were they already set affixed to your courtroom?
No, we bought them and we put them on the table.
Oh. And did you bring them each time you went to court or did they
Nope,
stay?
they lived there.
Okay.
Printers? Printers?
Yes.
Printers for what?
We have printers so that we can communicate with the court with paper. We have not yet gone paperless to the extent that we can just send the plea paperwork to the court or motions to the court electronically. We have to do that on paper. We're working on that. It wasn't completely smooth. There were some challenges. The connectivity issues were a big problem. You know, we started in a very old building, and they built a new courthouse, which helped our connectivity a great deal. If you have an older courthouse with wireless problems, we got some extra routers. We were doing whatever we could to try and help with the connectivity. In the old courthouse, we found that we had to have wired access. We just couldn't do it wirelessly because of the connectivity problems. Server space was a surprise to us. We did not realize how much server space we were going to use when we initially went paperless. And it turned out we have had to get new server, more server space twice since we have, yes sir?
Do you know how much server space you're using right now?
Golly, I really don't.
I was just curious.
That's a little techie for me.
Yes. Are you only putting copies of reports on there, or are you also putting videos and audios and
Videos, audio. So some of the stuff that we're keeping is really, really large. And now Denver has gone with body cams. And so there are these huge videos that come across, and we're finding that we can't store it. We're going to keep it on a cloud somewhere because they're way too big to keep. But you have to kind of think it through. And we had thought that we would keep our data forever. You know, we used to have a purging policy where every 5 years we would get rid of our files, and we thought, oh, if they're electronic, we'll just keep them forever. But that's probably not realistic. There needs to be a plan for troubleshooting and technical assistance 24/7. For us, we run a courtroom 7 days a week. And so if there are problems with data transmission, and I should say a little bit about not just, we weren't the only ones who went paperless. We went paperless with Justware, but our police department went paperless, our county court went paperless, and our sheriff's department went paperless, and our district attorney's office went paperless. And so we all communicate together through one hub where we can all put in, well, some of us can put in data, some of us can retrieve data. So it's very important if there is some sort of blockage and the data isn't getting through, then we can't work. So we have to have troubleshooting and technical assistance all the time. You cannot have a minute where there's nobody available to help us with our technical stuff. And that was a challenge as well because Denver, a couple of years ago, to try and save money, went to a central services concept. So we lost our own IT people, and now we use the city IT people. which is sort of like the Soviet system, and it works kind of the same way. So that was a little challenging. We needed to have the printers in the courtroom because the courts couldn't take our stuff paperlessly, and the laptops were heavy, so it really didn't take long before we had to invest in the tablets. The data entry took time and personnel. What we decided to do with data entry was start at one time and move forward, and we did not backfill. So there was a time when we were doing two processes. There was a paper process that started here, an electronic process that started here, and then slowly it began to even out, and then it's been electronic since probably 2011. Everything has been electronic. But so there was that period of time, if you choose not to backfill, where you are doing two processes at the same time, and for staff, it's a very, very hard time. And it's difficult to kind of remain positive and enthusiastic and loving and supportive when you know, it really sucks for them. So we had to hardwire in, as I said, and then we replaced with tablets. We added the printers, and the paralegals still use the laptops because they actually are more reliable. Our tablets are a little bit buggy. And now we get our data that's fed in directly from police and courts. When we first went paperless, nobody else had gone paperless, and so we had to scan everything. And scanning, as it turns out, is very, very boring. So it was hard to encourage people when we changed over their position to, no, now you're going to be a scanner. They were not happy with it, and we found that we could only make them scan for a couple of hours a day, and we had to rotate people through that scanning job.
When you had the law enforcement and the courts all went paperless, are you all on the same system, or are you all using different systems?
We are all using different systems. So what we built was a hub that handles all the data. So the police have their system can talk to the hub, and Justware can talk to the hub, and then the courts can talk to the hub, but everybody has their own system. We do keep some things as hard evidence. There are some things that we do not put into Justware. There are some DVDs that are just too large to load. I mean, they won't even load, they're so big. And we have to keep them in a paper file. Color photos, we don't have a color copier, so we keep the color photos in a paper file. If we have certified documents, something that needs to be in its original form, we keep those in a paper file. And then what we do is we put an attribute into the case and a pop-up so that the attorney and the paralegal both know that there's a file that goes with this case. So this is why I call it paper on demand. There's still going to be opportunities where the secretaries or the paralegals have to find a file. But now it's a really small number in comparison to what it used to be.
So you're not getting photos or any type of video evidence electronically that's being hand-delivered to your agency? You're not getting photos.
Yeah, I wish it was hand-delivered. We have to go get it.
Oh.
But yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's just data going over your house.
Correct.
Okay.
And the police department has promised that they're going to go to an electronic system, which will be better because then we can electronically get it, and then we wouldn't have to worry about the color printer, and we wouldn't have to keep paper files for that. So, yeah. The other paper on demand that we have, bless, is when the defendants or witnesses don't have access to technology, we have to print it out to give it to them. And we have a lot of pro se defendants in our courtrooms, And oftentimes on the day of trial, moments before trial, they'll say, but Judge, I don't even know, what they're alleging. And we'll have to print out a paper copy so that the defendant can get discovery because they never ordered it earlier. If we have redactions, they now have a redaction tool in Justware. When we first had it, when we first started using it, they didn't have that tool. And the redaction tool actually is great. We just, in fact, put in a new process for when victims or witnesses have confidentiality to their address, where we do the redactions on all of the original documents, and then we have a business rule that creates a special letter that goes to the attorney that says, this is your reminder, there is a protective order on this information, you're not to share this with your client, and here's the contact information for the witness, so that they have the redacted copy if they want to use that paperwork to go over with their client. We make sure that all of the information that should be protected is only taken out of it. Well, here's what we gained by going paperless. Efficiency, accuracy, and quality. In efficiency, the time that we save is incalculable. It took an enormous amount of time to compile the docket every day for the secretaries. They would have to go look on people's desks and look in the file room, look in the, at the victim advocate desks, and try and get all of these paper files together for trial was intense in terms of time consuming. The courtroom performance, this actually was kind of a surprise to me. Our attorneys are so much faster at accessing information as they're standing at the podium. If something comes up where they can just click on it instead of pulling all of the paper and thumbing through what's in the file. The improved customer service is also a highlight. It used to be that when a victim or a witness or a defendant or a defense attorney called, you would have to take the information and say, I'll call you back when I get the file. And then you would have to leave your office and go find the file, which was never where it was supposed to be. And you run around and look for the file, or tell your secretary to run around and look for the file, and then call the person back. Same thing if somebody was calling me to complain, or if it was the press calling to find out what was going on with the case, I could never give anybody any accurate information unless or until I found the file. And then hopefully I could read what was going on in the file. Oftentimes I couldn't. So the idea that we can all get into a file and it's updated in real time makes it so much easier. You can just get right on there, figure out whatever it is that you need to give them in terms of information, and then also update the information that's coming in. What we did was we asked everybody, all our staff from top to bottom, every time they talked to somebody in a case, to verify their contact information. So we've actually saved an enormous amount of money in sending out subpoenas to wrong addresses, which was another side benefit, and we're no longer chasing the paper files. So this is what we calculated in terms of the monetary savings. You can see it's pretty significant. $350. It's a lot of money. What was interesting is that even though our attorneys were particularly resistant to this change, once people got into it, we actually did some satisfaction surveys, and the information that we got back was really so encouraging. People really, really like the system. In terms of accuracy, again, we stopped all those touches of a file, so there are decreased opportunities for errors. The database is always available, so if you want to work from home, that was a really big one for us, because it was terrifying to me to allow the attorneys to take paper files out because they were our only copy, and if they got hit by a car or there was a flood, or something bad happened, I mean, that stuff's gone, it's just done. So the idea that people could work at home made them very, very happy. And we used to have lost files periodically, and the cases simply had to be dismissed because we couldn't do any discovery and we didn't know who the witnesses were. So here is more about our satisfaction survey. Every single employee said that Justware increased their efficiency. 83% said it increased the accuracy, and 92% said that it saved them time. In terms of the quality, the professionalism and confidence, again, this was one of those things that surprised me. As the attorneys are standing at the podium, they're so much more sure of themselves because they can access the information with just a tap instead of going through things. And frankly, people see them as more knowledgeable and more professional and more trustworthy because they're more confident in themselves. It also gave them more confidence about discovery, what had been discovered and when. We did not have a system where we did bait stamping. So we had on the front of the file, the secretary would stamp with a date those things that she discovered. So it wasn't always accurate, and defense attorneys could always stand up and say, "It's a discovery violation," and then, you know, and the court would sanction us. It was really awful, and it felt bad for the attorneys to stand there and take a licking, and they didn't have to do that anymore. So again, the quality of the customer service is improved, and the quality of the cases themselves is improved because there isn't that opportunity to have the errors, and we don't have as many cases that are falling through the cracks of bad information for victim contact. Here was another lawyer. In fact, this came from a lawyer who was probably the worst about hiding files in his office. He turned into a convert. So we set this matrix up for our funder, and these were the goals that we had, and we actually exceeded all of them except e-discovery, which Justware was ready to go with in 2010, and the Soviet style of tech services in Denver says they will be ready next month. So this is kind of what our, the difference between having the pile of paper files sitting on your desk, ready to open for trial. We call that a prep box. And so this is what it looks like instead. You open up your screen and you can hyperlink to each of these cases by case number or by defendant. It tells you what it's set for. Some of them will be set for motion, some of them will be set for arraignment, some set for jury trial. And you can order them by court date, or you can order them by other ways of importance depending upon however you want to design that. The attorneys actually can use any one of these to organize their box, so they can only, if they want, they can only have the jury trials come up, or only have motions come up. And again, you hyperlink right to the case. And this is the case summary that we can pull up. And this doesn't show you the whole thing, but what we get is we get the case information, the name, the charges, any attributes that we put into the case, so we can tell if the case is, for instance, a domestic violence case. In this case, the defendant was drinking alcohol, very shocking. We can tell that he had prior DVs, so this is not his first rodeo. We know how old this case is and how long it's been hanging around. We can tell who else is involved in the case, the victims, the witnesses, the police officers. We can tell what events have been said in the case, what correspondence has been sent out in the case, what attorney notes or paralegal notes, as you scroll down, can all be seen on one screen. And this is what the agencies and involved parties look like for us, where we can get name information. These are all name files that are hyperlinked. So as we go into a file, if I'm talking on the phone to the victim and I say, I need to confirm your address, do you still live at 125 Main Street? And she says, no, I can click on it and change it right there. And these are the notes. This is the thing I like best as a supervisor. When I get a call from the press or whatever, and they say, what did you do and why? I just go down here and I say, well, this is what we did and this is why. What we did in terms of the money savings is we didn't actually see any real money savings. What we did was we reallocated our resources so that we could improve our services. And that was actually really important for us to message to the staff, because that was another fear as we went paperless. People were like, oh my God, am I going to make myself obsolete? Am I going to, paperless myself right out of the job? What we did instead is we launched a neighborhood prosecution team, which allows us to be more in the community, more involved with the police. We actually have some remote offices now in police stations, and we have folks that go to community meetings and really build this interface with the communities. We established an elder abuse prevention program that deals with not just the elder abuse that's happening in Denver, but we created a training program that we've taken all over the state of Colorado. We opened up a victim outreach office so that people can come in, particularly domestic violence victims. We invite them to come to our office the very next morning so that hopefully we can start to build some rapport with them. And that helped our domestic violence prosecution and increased our customer service and our confidence. I think that the insights are things that I've really talked about. The automating of forms and motions and letters was also a really good side benefit of it. I had no idea how many of my staff were just doing free form kind of stuff. They would just make up their own thing. And it was sort of shocking, when it came back to me. Now, everything is the same. We have the same letterhead, we have the same language, we have the same information going out because everything is created through Justware. And because we've automated our business functions, again, there is just so much more that we can do with our time because everything is just automated. And we have built this really wonderful relationship with our technology services. Oh, that's a good one.
She says it with a smile.
So, as I said, we are implementing our e-discovery, and we're going to be moving traffic into Justware, which is going to be amazing. This is sort of an idea of what we did for discovery. We would print out the paper, and then we would put the other data on discs, and so people would call us and say, we'd like discovery. We'd go ahead and create the discovery, put it at the front desk. They'd never come and pick it up. So after a while, we would purge what was at the front desk, and then they would call and say, but I want my discovery. And so we would have to create it again. We found that 40% of our discovery was never picked up. It was a huge improvement. So e-discovery is something that we're really excited about. The other thing that we were able to do in terms of discovery in the interim, because everything is already scanned and in Justware, now we do one data disk. So we don't make paper copies of anything for people. We give them a data disk for everything. And this is me. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
I do. How do you handle keeping track of speed trial? We had Dawn create a little program that has never worked. And so if you have the answer to that, you will have made my day.
We had New Dawn create a little program for that. And we found that it didn't fit in with what was actually happening in the courtroom, so we never used it. I don't know whether it works or doesn't work, and don't tell Ben, because he worked really hard creating it, but we never used it. So I don't really have an answer for that. We rely on the court to tell us when Speedy runs, and I think that she has like a calendar, and our Speedy trial is short, it's 91 days, so.
Right. Yeah, well, our court and the prosecutor's office uses Justware together, so the answer is you don't have one.
We don't have one.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Appeals. Do you have to actually print out the entire e-filing documents for appeal purposes to create the court record?
No. The court record is retained by the court, and so they will create what goes up on appeal. Our records aren't necessarily admitted into evidence, and so we have more than the court has. So the court creates what the record that goes up to for us, the district court. And then what we do, you know, if I have a good screen for it, but as we change over, you can see here we have like the case number in here. We can make this inactive as a case number and put on the new case number for the appellate case, and then we can still manage all of our documents in Justware. Did anybody else have questions?
You mentioned this hub that everybody's corresponding with. Did you do an API?
Yes.
And who did that for you?
So we have both, an API and a bus. Our hub is a bus. And the API was the tunnel that we built just between us and the county court. So it just went, and for us it went one direction, from the county court to us. We didn't give any data back to them. And then when we had all of these other people joining in on the fund, it wasn't, you can't just rebuild it. It doesn't work like that. So we had to build this bus in the middle, particularly because everybody had these different computer systems that they were working with, and the architecture would have been insane. So we built the bus, and now everybody can either talk to the bus or pull things out of the bus as they are authorized for, and we have the API existing within the bus. Because we still get some files in their paper form, if defendants have failed to appear for 5 years, which sometimes happens, those cases are still going to be on paper, and so we're not going to be able to pull the information from the bus because it's not going to be in there, because the police used a paper form. So we still have to have that API from the court that tells us that this case is now active.
So you're getting your investigative files from that, from the bus?
We get our investigative files from the bus.
And then does it populate your agencies and involved parties too?
Yes.
Okay.
It populates this, the bus, and getting the rest of the system to cooperate and go paperless is the best thing that you can do if you can manage it. It's difficult to coordinate. It's even worse than getting attorneys to do what you want them to do. But when you can do that, we don't have to do a lot of scanning anymore. And again, like I said, the scanning was a very difficult job to assign because nobody wanted to do it because it's very boring. So if you can avoid doing it by having things populate automatically, our filing cabinet populates with the investigative reports automatically, and all of our involved parties do as well.
Do you use just?
We do not use Justice Web. We experimented a little bit with Justice Web with phones to see if we could make that work in the courtroom, and it was too tiny. So we actually VPN in from the tablets. The Justice Web offered like a reduced version of what we have. Not everything that we use was accessible, so we went with the VPN. Yes, sir.
Can you show us your screen that has the prep box on it? and what kind of view that is. I was curious to find out. It looked like something you created
Yes.
on your own.
Yes. So we created, this is what we call the den tabbed view, and it's the view that we created. This 18 months that we spent was spent on creating the views that we wanted, the reports that we needed, populating all of the tables that needed to be populated. It took a whole lot of work. That was an intense 18 months to get what we wanted. So we created this look so that we can go, this DCA docket is the court docket. And for us, everything is driven by the court docket. The court sets it and we just go and appear and our docket is there in front of us. It's a little bit different for those people who are doing nuisance abatement and probate. It's not docket driven, and so we had to build a different view for them so that they could see their docket. But we can see the docket as it is before it happens, and then we can see a completed docket. We have tasks and prep, which are two different things, because we wanted them to be separated, those cases that have not yet been opened for trial, and those cases that just need a task done. Please call the victim, make sure you order this, something like that. And then this new cases, this tab actually is only accessible by one paralegal, and she assigns all the cases to the attorneys. So she's the only one who gets to see them. The way we had our cases come into us, we had to kind of limit, because there are more cases that come into the court than we really needed to see on our Justware views. And so we decided that we weren't going to see them until they had certain things occur. So they had to be set into one of 3 courtrooms plus have an attorney assigned to them. So they would come into this new cases box, and then she would put the attorney, and then the cases could be reviewed by the attorneys. And then we have co-courts and themas are tabs that we use for getting criminal histories. And the new US&C cases are for the cases that come over electronically. We can see all of them as they come in. The reason that we have that is because those cases, in order for a victim advocate to make contact with victims, we have to be able to see them before they are set into one of the 3 courtrooms that we originally had designed this for. So we had to make a new tab for that.
So with your API and you have the DCA docket tab, you're able to click on the tab and then look at which cases you need to actually, you know, that are for your office that you're going to actually file cases on? Is that how you do it?
No, the cases are filed, so we just get the docket. So the court has set them for jury trial or court trial or dispo or arraignment or motion, whatever it is that the court sets them for, we pull it up by date. So if I look at the 9/17 docket for a particular courtroom, I just get the docket.
Okay.
So everything that's set in that courtroom that day.
So that if you're in the courtroom with the tablet, you're using your VPN to VPN back into Justware?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Could you say more about your criminal history process?
The criminal history process is kind of complicated. But what we do is we have in this new US&C cases, when the victim advocates are getting into the case, they can pull a criminal history and drop and drag it into the file if they think they have the time to do that.
So you're like they're like running a III and doing it that way, or?
No, we don't do an NCIC unless the attorney specifically asks for it. We do this co-courts, gives us a Colorado criminal history,
Okay.
CCIC, or a themis is just a Denver criminal history.
Got it, okay.
And so we have those 2 tabs on there because the paper criminal history that we have the secretary run and put into the file, when it comes to this new cases box is not necessarily accurate through time. If the defendant fails to appear for a couple of years, that is just a static picture of what it was. So the attorneys in the courtroom or the paralegals in the courtroom can take a look at those and see if there's new criminal history, which particularly for probation revocation purposes, they like to have that.
So it's tied, I'm sorry, so it's tied into your DOJ database?
It's actually just an internet-based search engine.
So is that constantly kept up to date with new criminal history with a business rule, or are you just, that's the snapshot picture when the case was created, and then your paralegals to look to see if there was anything new?
B.
The second one?
Yes. Anybody else? Yes.
If you set up a policy to purge all files, doesn't that wipe out the criminal history?
No. No, the conviction remains, and the conviction is actually still kept in the co-courts database and in the Themis database. We report our convictions to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and then they keep the criminal history.
So you'd have nothing local.
We would have none of the supporting paperwork.
Okay.
So if you called me and said, can I have a copy of my, my statement that I wrote in 2003, the answer is no, I'm sorry.
Well, on the reservation, we don't send our things out to the state. So if we delete our stuff, we don't have a history.
Well, we haven't deleted anything yet, but it's only been 4 years. So we've had enough server space to keep it going, and I haven't felt the need to, and nobody has told me that we need to start purging. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but it will happen, unless you have off-site storage, off-site cloud storage, where you can put your data. Yes.
Do you also back up all your information?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they actually back up twice a day. And that was actually really important for us because we had all of our e-discovery stuff disappear, and we had to recreate it with the backup data. It's kept on a separate server.
Do that in the cloud or on-site or?
Off-site on a server.
Okay.
Yes.
What are you using, what kind of software are you using for e-discovery?
We are using the Justware e-discovery module for the data, and then the technology services had to build a pay port, and that's what has taken so long, is finding the vendor and getting everything to be compatible with Justware, so that what happens is that, we send, the attorney logs on and enters on the case and requests discovery, and then we approve it, and we give them a code, and then they use the code and they swipe their card or put in their information, and then the pay portal has to alert us that the money has been received so that we can release the discovery. It sounds more complicated than it is. And it's hot. We actually have it pretty automated if it works this month. So that everything is just done with emails that are automatically created. And so our discovery, we think it can be within an hour that they make the initial request, and then we can give them the authority to download, which obviously is better than what it's taking us now, which our goal is 5 days, which is our goal. Anybody else? I really encourage you to think about going paperless. This honestly has been the best thing that I have done in my career. This is better than jailing murderers and rapists. This is really, really satisfying when you can see, the work that you do, and it's all right there. And particularly as a supervisor, I can go into, as you see these names, I can go into anybody's boxes. I can go into their task boxes, their prep boxes. I can see what they've done, and I can see what they haven't done. It's a really, really good tool. I thank you so much. Yes, Ms.